I'm trying to find the thread and
Hello, motherfucker.
trying to find the thread in the PDF. Oh, I forget you have it bookmarked. So let me find my place. I'm gonna see if I can knock this out like today. That way we can move on to the next book. Let's see. He shouldn't have been in jail, but in a hospital, or rather in good hands, because, oh, I think I already read this. Next morning. Oh, yeah. On the 5th floor, we were placed in holding cells while we waited for the court session to begin. My name was called first. As I entered the packed courtroom, the first people I saw were Charles Gary, Faye Stender, and Bernie Dreyfus at the attorney's table. Behind them were my family and friends, and quite a few reporters I had come to know over the past 2 years. Going into the packed courtroom and seeing the reporters on one side, my family, friends, and spectators on the other, was like a flashback to the same scene 2 years before. The whole thing seemed to be starting over again. It reminded me of a line from Kafka's The Trial that I think of when events seem to be repeating themselves. When Kay, the hero of the novel, is about to be executed, he says, "At the beginning of my case, I wanted it to finish, and at the end of it, I wanted it to begin again." At first, Kay is bothered by the confusion of going through the court system, the slow wheels of justice or injustice, the questioning, the stifling routine. It is a slow, draining process, which Kay equates with the absurd toil and the endless striving of life. I felt the same emotions, wanting the absurdities and the eternal toil to end. Then, at the end, I was not quite ready for it to be over and felt a vague desire for it to start all over again. 2 years were obliterated. The judge sat in the same seat as if he had never moved from it. The attorney stood at the same table. Perhaps the 2 years had only been a nightmare between days in court, and now I had awakened to go through the trial again and again in a vicious cycle. Then, with the surge of happiness at seeing my old friends in the spectator section, I realized that it was really over. It had been worth it. The perseverance, the hanging on, the not ever giving up. Now I could return to them with my head high because I had not let them down. And they, on their part, had not let me down. Together, we had endured and prevailed over the ordeal without letting it change us in essential ways. That was my feeling. Suddenly, the bad dream of 33 months seemed insignificant. The district attorney had promised to come up with a happy medium regarding bail. His happy medium turned out to be $50,000. And when he recommended this amount to the judge, it was accepted. This was a high and unjust sum. Who has that kind of money? I knew it would be a hardship for the people to raise that much cash. The judge did not show any courage either by lowering the bail or even raising it. He went right along with the recommendation, so it was really the district attorney who set bail. This is the kind of justice dealt out to the people. The defense attorney is also an officer of the court and is supposedly on the same footing as the district attorney, but the district attorney has many more privileges because he represents the established order, the powerful and the rich, who see it that he is backed up and supported. The defense attorney merely represents the people. After my bail was set, I returned to the holding cell. The inmates waiting to go to court offered congratulations all around, happy that I would soon be free. Then I was taken back upstairs where I sat with my attorneys in the lawyer's room and discussed the bail situation. We had raised some money, but not enough, and they were in favor of getting it from a bail bondsman, but I was against this idea. Rather than come out right away, I wanted to stay in jail until all the bail had been raised. This was important. A bail bondsman fee was about $5,000, and I felt that if all the money could be raised without him, that $5,000 was better spent for community programs.
Ben.
Yeah.
Hey, George. I see your hand.
Yeah, how you doing, V? I learned you're not so well and you sound not so well. How you doing?
Good.
Oh, okay, good, good, good. I'm wishing you a speedy recovery from whatever you're going through. Wishing you a speedy recovery. Sorry for interrupting the
Thank
space. I
you.
wanted to check on you. Pen and pencil, I hope you're also doing very well.
Thank you, George.
Welcome. You'll be fine. You'll be very fine. All right, so sorry for interrupting. Please go ahead.
No, thank you for well wishes. And yeah, we definitely want choose to recover quickly. Thank you. Let's see. Uh, oh, there we go. Argument was intense. The attorneys and all my brothers said it was more important that I hit the street right away to give the movement a positive jolt. I argued that the party has always discouraged putting a 10% bond for other comrades. Policy has been to stay in jail until the whole amount was raised so that the party recovered the whole amount. In the first 4 years of the party, we have been forced to raise several $1 million in bail around the country. If the 10% that had gone to pay bail bondsman fees had been channeled into community programs, we would have been better off. To me, it was a matter of principle to stay in jail, but I was overruled. In the end, it all came to nothing anyway. No bail bondsman had an insurance company that would let him put up the money. We had to raise it all. I did not return to my cell, but remained in the attorney's room. I was hungry now. On leaving the penal colony, I had resolved not to eat until I was free. I simply fasted. In some respects, Alameda County Jail had changed. It did not seem as dirty as it once had been, but the food was still unacceptable. Also, everyone washes his own tray in a 5-gallon bucket of water, and with 30 guys washing one bucket, the water gets really slimy. Part of my resolution to fast had to do with lack of sanitary methods of cleaning the utensils. It is a miracle that everyone does not come down with I don't know how to say that word, dysentery or worse.
That's right.
Thank you. While we were waiting, my lawyer noticed a group of police leaving the building with boxes of clubs. They must be about to release you, he said. They're going out with clubs. After this, some prisoners passed through the room, a couple of brothers out the tank. I gave them the power sign and they returned it. A few moments later, one of the sheriff's deputies came in to ask me to go directly across the street upon my release in order to avoid a confrontation with the police. A crowd had gathered outside in anticipation of a rally to be held at Lake Merritt Park as soon as I got out. The people were blocking the street. He said, and in the interest of the court, they would have to clear it. He had a big, sneaky smile on his face. I looked into his cold blue eyes and told him the, that I would leave the jail, and that was it. Then my attorney signed some papers, and I went back to my cell to pick up my paraphernalia and bid all the inmates goodbye. I had to do this quickly because, again, I felt guilty over my good fortune while so many of them would have to go without freedom for a long time, perhaps even until the climax of the revolution. My only consoling thought was that perhaps after my release, I could do something to hasten that event. My lawyers took my boxes and I went to the gate and walked out of the jail on the 10th floor. Ahead, along the hall, was a solid wall of newspapermen and TV reporters, cameras and lights. Everyone was yelling, asking questions, demanding answers. I tried to make my way to the elevator with my brothers, Walter Jr., Melvin, David Hiller, and a couple of Black Panthers clearing the way. We managed to get in the elevator, but at the last minute, with a desperate lunge, reporters crowded in with us. We started down, but the overloaded elevator stopped cold just below the 4th floor. We walked the rest of the way down the stairs. That shit would cause anxiety. Like I know he's thinking like, yo, I could be killed. This might be a trap. That would fuck with my mind. On the 1st floor, we made our way out of the main entrance on Lake Merritt Park. It was a bright blue sky day, just the kind of day I wanted. Looking ahead, I could see thousands of beautiful people in the sea of hands, all of them waving. When I gave them the power sign, the hands shot up in reply and everyone started to cheer. God, it was good. I felt this tremendous sense of release, of liberation, like taking off your shirt on a hot day and feeling free, unbound by anything. Later, I did take off my shirt, but it was obvious now that we would not be able to get out the front door. A mass of cheering supporters stretched from the steps all the way across the street into the park. I had to fight back the tears. It was wonderful to be out, but even more exhilarating to see the concern and emotion of the people. The crush was so overwhelming that we turned back and went to the other exit. But the people quickly ran around the other side, and as we went down the stairs and into the street, they surged around us, shouting joyfully, carrying us along. My sisters, Leola, Doris, and Myrtle, ran up to me, and we embraced. Faye Stinter, Alex Hoffman, and Edward Keating were in front of me, while Charles Gary was swamped by newsmen. My brothers, Melvin and Walter, were there, David and Pat Hillard, Beside Hewitt, the Minister of Education, and many Black Panther comrades. It was almost a stampede. I could not walk. I felt I was suffocating, but it didn't matter. In the euphoria, I just held on to my relatives, friends, and comrades and was dragged along. My feet hardly touched the ground. It was a beautiful day. When we finally got to the car, we could not move it because of the crush. The only way to clear the area was to climb up on top of the car. First, I asked them to clear the street, but they demanded that I say something. I was going to make a speech and hold an impromptu rally right then and there, but from my vantage point, I could see the police edging toward the crowd with their clubs, shields, and helmets. They were itching to move in. Since it is against party principles to encourage mass confrontations with the police if it can be avoided, I just said a few words and asked them to clear the street. They still would not leave, but demanded more. So I told them to go to Bobby Hutton Memorial Park, where we would hold a rally. At that, the people broke for their cars, which was fortunate since it slowed the cops down. Now we had to do something. I had lied to get the people out of there and away from the police. No rally was scheduled for Bobby Hutton Memorial Park, and I sent a brother to the park to tell them we could not come there that day for security reasons. Everyone, my lawyers included, advised me not to show up unprotected at big gatherings like this. It was just an open invitation for some maniac to take a shot at me. There was still so much feeling about the case in Oakland that we decided to wait for cooler times before I appeared at mass gatherings. I wanted to go directly home, but my brothers and sisters thought it would be too much of a shock for my father, who was not well and unable to sustain high emotion. My mother was in a hospital. She knew nothing of my release, but Melvin and the others figured she could handle it better than my father. Before I saw her, however, I went to a friend's house and got out of my prison clothes and went to a news conference at Charles Gary's office. The news conference was unusual because it included a lot of movement people I had come to like over the months in jail. It was anything but the kind of cool encounter I usually have with the regular news media. A question would come at me, and when I started to answer, I would suddenly realize that this was a person I wanted to rap with personally. This happened over and over again with people there that day. Some of the establishment press came, but it was 90% underground press. At this press conference, I offered Black Panther troops to the National Liberation Front of the People's Republic of Vietnam. When we left the news conference, I went to the hospital to see my mother. It was a joyous reunion. Later, when my father and I met, he was deeply moved and wept. He told me he had not expected to live long enough to see me freed from prison. During the first few days out of jail, I wondered when reality would come in relation to myself, to the world around me, to all that was happening to me. I had literally forgotten how to live outside. I had to develop all over again my old reflex actions to avoid being startled or puzzled by certain phenomena. People who have never served time in prison do not realize that a large percentage of their behavior is a conditioned response involving no reasoning process. They instinctively react in the right way because they are used to the familiar patterns in their lives. Social stimuli and social forces do not baffle them. Cut off from all of this for a few years, life around me at first seemed jerky and out of synchronization. All the sounds, movements, and colors coming on simultaneously: television, telephone, radio, people talking, coming and going, doorbells and phones ringing, were dizzying at first. Ordinary life seemed hectic and chaotic and quite overwhelming. I even had to figure out what to eat and what time I was going to bed. In prison, all this had been decided for me. Walking around the streets was an indescribable experience, the closest I have ever felt to being truly free. With people walking by, recognizing me and waving, I went everywhere, visiting people in the community to the surprise of many who had never expected to see me on the street, only on television or maybe in Hollywood after I was released. But I was determined to get back among them. I walked in Oakland, Berkeley, Richmond, and San Francisco. I went to 7th Street, Sacramento Ave, Potrero Hill, Hunters Point, Richmond, North Richmond, West Oakland, Peralta Street, Cypress Street, East Oakland, and Parkchester Village. I visited several bars where I had done a lot of recruiting, and everywhere I got the same reaction. People wondered why I had come back to them. I explained that neither news reporters nor television cameras had got me out of prison. The people had freed me, and I'd come back to thank them and be with them. At Father Earl Neal's church, St. Augustine's, I talked to members of his congregation. That too was a warm experience. Father Neal is a young Black Episcopal priest who has worked with the Black community and party since coming to Oakland. We consider him our chaplain. He was involved in civil rights in Mississippi in the early 1960s, and he knows all about brutality and violence. During my trial, he came often to the courtroom to lend his support. Although people received me warmly, I was at first a symbol. Our relationship had changed. There was now an element of hero worship that had not existed before I got busted. But I wanted our rapport to get back to where it was before I went to jail. That is, a relationship based on face-to-face communication between people working together for survival. I think their faith and trust in me was restored. Although perhaps it will never be the same again, the earlier close family ties have been enlarged by an image of me created through publicity and the media. So much had been written, so much said, that I was distanced from them. There was a slight estrangement. It would be overcome. All this time, I was under immense pressure to give interviews, to fill speaking engagements, to appear on talk shows and television programs, but I accepted none of these for about 6 months. I even received a brochure for some Hollywood outfit. It contained newspaper clippings about me and a letter saying, "You're a star quality," or something like that, which would have been amusing had it not been such an overt capitalist attempt to co-opt the revolution. Too many so-called leaders of the movement have been made into celebrities and their revolutionary fervor destroyed by mass media. They become Hollywood objects and lose identification with the real issues. The task is to transform society. Only the people can do that, not heroes, not celebrities, not stars. A star's place is in Hollywood. The revolutionary's place is in a community with the people. A studio is a place where fiction is made, but the Black Panther Party is out to create nonfiction. We are making revolution. Let's see, how many pages is this? All right, so the next section is section 29, 315. I'm going to see if I can knock this out. All right, so the quote is from Ho Chi Minh, Wordplay 2, Prison Diary. People who come out of prison can build up the country. Misfortune is a test of people's fidelity. Has it been an hour? What time is it? No, it's only been a few minutes. Oh, hold on. I got you, Jules. Let me give you co-host right quick. All right. Oh, Choose, I really thought you were going to come off the mic and say, well, hello, motherfucker.
Hello, motherfucker. Sorry,
Yeah.
I got kicked out, so I just wanted to come back. Hey,
No, I'm glad you did.
retweet the space.
How are you feeling?
Okay,
Okay.
I appreciate you.
Thank you for coming. So let's see. Oh, okay. People who come out of prison can build up the country. Misfortune is a test of people's fidelity. Those who protest at injustice are people of true merit. When the prison doors are open, the real dragon will fly out. That was Ho Chi Minh, Wordplay It, Prison Diary. So the section is called Rebuilding. Back on the street, I quickly became involved again in the life and death issues that govern existence in the Black community. The most important task before us was to free Bobby Seale and Erica Huggins, who were in jail in Connecticut, awaiting trial on first-degree murder charges. Bobby and Erica should never have spent one day in jail for the ridiculous charges concerning Alex Rackley. It was all a part of an establishment plot to push Bobby into a death sentence or a jail cell, which they had been trying to do ever since the party was formed. After failing in Sacramento and Chicago, the establishment made its most serious attempt with the murder charge in Connecticut. Strong and effective counteractions were needed to defeat it. Then there were the Soledad brothers, comrades George Jackson, Philida Drumgo, and John Clutchett, who were who were nearing trial for their lives on a trumped-up charge of murdering a prison guard. The party had provided the initial funds and support to get their defense committee in operation, and we were working hard to give them greater support. We were also helping the defense of Los, I'm sorry, I'm about to butcher all this, Los Seti de la Raza, the 7 Chicanos who were awaiting trial in San Francisco on charges of killing a police officer. My own pending case seemed insignificant compared with the pressures of the establishment was bringing to bear on our noble warriors. I was facing only 13 more years in jail, but my comrades, every one of them, faced death. A number of other party matters also required action. When I got out of prison in August 1970, it was less than a month before the preliminary session of the Revolutionary Constitutional Convention to be held in Philadelphia over the Labor Day weekend. The second session was scheduled for Thanksgiving weekend in Washington, D.C. It had been Eldridge Cleaver's idea to hold these conventions. I was never enthusiastic about them, but because the Central Committee of the party went along with Eldridge, gross, I followed their direction. The purpose of the conventions was to discuss the plight of Black people and to write a new constitution for the United States. I could not see much point in spending time and effort writing a constitution when we had no power to implement it, okay? Eldridge, gross, was in Algeria, and we spoke by telephone about this on several occasions. I pushed a point of view that our most urgent commitment was to build a strong base of community support behind Bobby and Erica, as well as the Soledad brothers. Eldridge, disgusting, expressed some agreement with me, and toward the goal we arranged to Kathleen Cleaver, we had greater. Let me reread that. I think I read that wrong. Eldridge expressed some agreement with me, and toward this goal, we arranged for Kathleen Cleaver, who had great drawing power, to return and speak at Washington sessions. My address at the Philadelphia rally would be my first major public appearance since being released. People were expecting a lot of me, and I worked hard on the speech. In the meantime, the Philadelphia police were determined to prevent the conference from taking place. A few days before it was scheduled to begin, they raided the Black Panther Party headquarters and arrested most of the comrades. In a strong show of unity, the community came together within hours, reopened the offices, handled the telephones, and went ahead with arrangements for the conference. This community support was living proof that we can never bring about the revolution without the people. On the other hand, I was disturbed by much of what I saw at the Philadelphia session. I tried in my speech to make some contribution to the people's understanding and the advancement of their consciousness. What I wanted to show was that Black people and other minorities in this country have been betrayed by the American Constitution, the legal foundation of government. I stressed that the United States of America came into being at a time when the nation comprised a narrow strip of land on the eastern seaboard and whose population was small and homogeneous both racially and culturally. The economic system then was different, too, essentially agricultural. A small population and fertile land meant that people were able to advance according to their motivation and ability. In this way, democratic capitalism flourished in the new nation. Then I went on to say, the following years were to see this new nation rapidly develop into a multi-limbed giant. The new nation acquired land and spread from narrow strip on the eastern seaboard to cover almost the entire continent. The new nation acquired a population to fill this newly acquired land. This population was drawn from the continents of Africa, Asia, Europe, and South America. This is a nation conceived by homogeneous people of a small number, and in a small area grew into a nation of heterogeneous people comprising a large number and spread across the entire continent. The change in the fundamental characteristics of the nation and its people substantially changed the nature of American society. Furthermore, the social changes were marked by economic changes. A rural and cultural economy became an urban and industrialized economy, as farming was replaced by manufacturing. The democratic capitalism of our early days became caught up in the relentless drive to obtain profits, until the selfish motivation for profits eclipsed the unselfish principles of democracy. Thus, 200 years later, we have an overdeveloped economy which is so infused with the need for profit that we have replaced democratic capitalism with bureaucratic I called it capitalism. The free opportunity of all men to pursue their economic ends has been replaced by constraints, confinement, placed on Americans by the large corporations which control the direct control and direct our economy. They have sought to increase their profits at the expense of the people, and particularly at the expense of the racial and ethnic minorities. We find evidence for majority freedom and minority oppression in the fact that even while the early settlers were proclaiming their freedom, they were deliberately and systematically depriving Africans of their freedom. Generation after generation of the majority group have been born. They have worked and they have seen the fruits of their labors and the life and liberty and happiness of their children and grandchildren. Generation after generation of Black people in America have been born. They have worked and they have seen the fruits of their labors in their oppressors while their own descendants wallow in the mirror of poverty and deprivation, holding only to the hope of change in the future. This hope has sustained us for many years and has led us to suffer the administrations of a corrupt government. At the dawn of the 20th century, this hope led us to formulate a civil rights movement in the belief that this government would eventually fulfill its promise to Black people. We did not recognize, however, that any attempt to complete the promise of an 18th century revolution in the framework of a 20th century government was doomed to failure. The descendants of that small company of original settlers of the land are not among the common people of today. They have become a small ruling class in control of a worldwide economic system. The Constitution set up by their ancestors to serve the people no longer does so, for the people have changed. The people of the 18th century have become the ruling class of the 20th century, and the people of the 20th century are the descendants of the slaves and dispossessed of the 18th century. The Constitution set up to serve the people of the 18th century now serves the ruling class of the 20th century, and the people of today stand waiting for a foundation of their own life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Grab some water. As I talked, it seemed to me that the people were not really listening or even interested in what I had to say. Almost every sentence was greeted with loud applause, but the audience was more concerned with phrase mongering than with the ideological development. I am not a good public speaker. I tend to lecture and teach in a rather dull fashion, but the people were not responding to my ideas, only to an image. And although I was very excited by all the energy and enthusiasm I saw there, I was also disturbed by the lack of serious analytical thought. After Philadelphia, we tried to organize rallies across the country in preparation for the Washington Convention. We have been counting on Kathleen Cleaver's return to organize these rallies in support of Bobby and Erica, since we knew that Kathleen could draw in people, speak effectively, and give us the boost we needed. Then, for reasons unfathomable to us at the time, Eldridge changed his mind and refused to let her come. This was a real setback. We had announced that Kathleen would be at the convention, but when Eldridge would not allow that, I tried to change the direction of the Washington meeting. Gross. In an important way, the convention marked a turning point in the party's development. Instead of focusing on a new constitution, we concentrated on plans for building community organizing programs. I sent out a directive to all chapters and branches, telling them to come prepared to set up displays explaining community programs and to urge people to sign up for them. Then, when the comrades returned home, they would have a list of names of committed people who would be organized. For me, the theme of the convention in Washington was not a new constitution, but organization for survival. And from that time on, we began to refer to the party community programs as survival programs. The whole idea of the community programs had been developed by Bobby Seale while I was in prison, and his brilliant organizing methods had helped to establish them. The Breakfast for Children program was set up first. Other programs, clothing distribution centers, liberation schools, housing, prison projects, and medical centers soon followed. We called them survival programs pending revolution, since we needed long-term programs and a disciplined organization to carry them out. They were designed to help the people survive until their consciousness is raised, which is only the first step in the revolution to produce a new America. I frequently use the metaphor of the raft to describe the survival programs. A raft put into service during a disaster is not meant to change conditions, but to help one get through a difficult time. During a flood, the raft is a life-saving device, but it is only a means of getting to higher and safer ground. So too with survival programs, which are emergency services. In themselves, they do not change social conditions, but they are life-saving vehicles until conditions change. The Washington Convention could have been a great leap forward, but nothing worked out well. Howard University had agreed to host the convention, but at the last minute, the university withdrew facilities and the comrades had to find another hall. Some churches made space available, so we were able to hold our workshops and meetings in them. But there was poor planning, poor coordination, and a deficiency in skills needed to organize and execute such a gigantic undertaking. Another weakness was the diffuseness of goals among those who came to the convention, especially among the whites. Why were they there? My goals were different from theirs. They had been drawn to the party by Eldridge rhetoric, bros, and their views had come to influence to many of our activities. I made up my mind that we could not let white radicals define the struggle for us, and they knew too little about the Black experience and life in the Black communities. Deep into the violence of the revolution, they wanted the Black Panthers to write a new constitution, overthrow the government by force, and implement it. When this did not come out, when this did not come about in Washington, we got critical letters claiming we were no longer the vanguard of the movement. I paid no attention. In fact, we were glad to be rid of the radicals because all they did was talk. Those who understood the true nature of revolution stood with us. The defection of both Eldridge, Cleaver, and the party were summed up in the shambles of Washington Convention. Gross. Cleaver was demanding that we act out these fantasies of instant power. In Philadelphia, the crowds had been overwhelmingly Black. They kept us down to earth. But in Washington, the white radical fantasies had those of Cleaver merged, and we, the all too human Black Panthers, could not gratify them. In metaphysical streets, Cleaver and the infantile leftists were waiting on corners for the revolution to come to them. We were not able to hand down a manifesto like Moses on Sinai. Our grievances ever have been that for a moment in time, we too had joined the suicidal dance around the golden calf. The bad news from Washington, D.C., the city of lies, was that the American Revolution had only reached the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end. In the months after my release, I traveled from city to city, meeting comrades and doing what I could to organize committees for Erica and Bobby. In my travels, I observed the work being done in dozens of communities and saw evidence that the Black Panthers had built a strong organization. But we needed to do more, much more. We had the base now on which to construct a potent social force in the country, but some of our leading comrades lacked the comprehensive ideology needed to analyze events and phenomena in a creative, dynamic way. We had tried to develop their understanding in political education classes. Now we needed a structure, and after discussion in the Central Committee, we organized the Ideological Institute in Oakland in December 1970. It was formed to train our more advanced comrades to observe and define phenomena along lines set down by the Black Panther Party. I had thought a good bit since my release about new ideas and concepts, but I did not want to be and could not be the only developing ideas and program. Given the opportunity, other comrades would be able to come up with imaginative programs and fresh solutions as they encountered changing conditions. This is essential for the advance of revolutionary thought. The Ideological Institute has succeeded in providing the comrades with an understanding of dialectical materialism. About 300 brothers and sisters attend classes to study in depth the works of great Marxist thinkers and philosophers. I get some water. Meanwhile, our efforts on behalf of Bobby and Erica continued. On one of my trips to New Haven to prepare for the trial, I met Erica Erickson, the renowned author and professor of developmental psychology at Harvard. His son, Kai, a sociologist and master of Trumbull College at Yale, thought it would be interesting for us to hold a series of discussions. I agreed, and he arranged a 3-day seminar in early February of 1971 at Yale University, in which 2 faculty members and 14 Yale students, 8 white and 6 Black, also took part. The discussions were held in the library of Yale University. I liked Erickson very much, and we got along well despite some trouble communicating during the first 2 days of the seminar. At first, we repeatedly talked past each other, and the students talked, At first, we repeatedly talked past each other, and the students talked such madness that they impeded our conversation. They had come to hear revolutionary slogans and violent rhetoric and were not satisfied with anything less than absolute solutions to the problems besetting society. The talk centered on Black Panther ideology, and Erickson saw the validity of the Black Panther approach. He pointed out that the two people can love each other only when both have dignity. If one person is without dignity, then the relationship is something else. Erickson noted that it is necessary to understand the complexity of all issues and all relationships. He brought many insights to our talks, drawing on his early days as a student at Freud and his studies of Gandhi and Martin Luther. Although there were moments of frustration, I think we both learned much from each other. At the time of the Yale meeting with Erickson, my secretary was a party member named Connie Matthews. Connie was from the West Indies, but she had migrated to Europe and lived for a time in one of Scandinavian countries. She claimed to speak several languages fluently. Connie had joined the party after hearing Bobby Seale speak on one of his European trips while I was still in prison. At first, she stayed in Europe to organize groups there, but later moved to our Algerian embassy under the direction of Eldridge Cleaver Gross. Less than 2 months after my release from prison, Eldridge sent her to Oakland to work out of central headquarters, where she was assigned to handle the details of my travel, speaking engagements, and the like. I found her somewhat unreliable and several times considered sending her back to Algiers, but you know what? Instead of saying this rapist's name, I'm gonna just say rapist because we need to sit with that they let this nigga just cook. Like, come on, man. And everybody knew. So yeah, we got to feel it. I found her somewhat unreliable and several times considered sending her back to Algiers, but the rapist insisted she remain in Oakland. In late 1970, she had married Michael Cataway Tuber, sorry if I said that name incorrectly, a Black Panther from New York and one of the 21 defendants in the circus the state called a conspiracy trial. Catawayo was an effective organizer and a good speaker, but he had suffered through some heavy drug and prison scenes. He fell completely under Connie's spell. When the meetings with Erickson came to an end, Connie and Catawayo disappeared, taking many of my personal papers with them. Of course, when Tabor jumped bail, this placed the other New York 21 in jeopardy, but more than that, I was puzzled about where they might have gone. Connie was not a citizen and would have trouble staying in the United States. Catawayo was a fugitive who could not travel easily outside the country unless he went to Cuba or Algiers. I did not think they would go to Cuba. They were not hard workers, and if they went to Algiers, they would be right in our hands. But the Algerian possibility started me thinking. After considering the alternatives, I began to suspect that something was wrong between the rapist in Algiers and the Central Committee of the party in Oakland, but I said nothing. Without enough evidence to be certain, I decided to wait and see. In the meantime, a big rally was planned for Oakland on March 5th, 1971, to kick off a large-scale effort in support of all political prisoners, when the main focus on the trial of Bobby and Erica in New Haven. The rally, called the Intercommunal Day of Solidarity, was scheduled for the Oakland Auditorium. Its keynote speaker would be Kathleen Cleaver, with musical entertainment provided by the Grateful Dead and the Lumpen, the Black Panther group whose primary purpose was not entertainment but political education through music and song. We wanted to attract a broad cross-section of the Bay Area community. While we made preparations, I talked a number of times with the rapist by phone, and although we had some disagreement about strategy and tactics, we did agree that the rally should come off as planned. However, doubt grew in our minds whether Kathleen would show up. We had good reason for uncertainty. At the Revolutionary Constitutional Convention in Washington the previous November, she had failed to appear. When I expressed these doubts to the rapist, he assured me that Kathleen would be there. In addition to the Oakland rally, we were planning a series of meetings across the country featuring Kathleen and local speakers. These rallies were meant to attract people whom we could recognize. I'm sorry, I lost my place. These rallies were meant to attract people whom we could organize into groups to work for the various trials as well as participate in the survival programs the party was developing. In order to publicize the Intercommunal Day of Solidarity, I had agreed to appear on a local TV show. My appearance would be a means of using the oppressor's media to carry our message to the people. For 3 hours before the show, I had an idea and called the rapist to discuss it with him. The TV show was one on which people called in to ask questions, but I suggested a reversal of this procedure. The show's host will call the rapist in Algeria, talk about the rally on the air, and announce that Kathleen was coming to speak. I knew this would arouse interest and increase attendance. But best of all, it would be done at the expense of the media. The station was enthusiastic. When I told the rapist of the plan, he liked it too and said he would be prepared for the call. When I arrived at the station that morning, I felt optimistic. We were getting the best local publicity. A large crowd would attend the rally. We had begun to build a strong base for our work to free political prisoners. Then the call to the rapist went through, and the world turned upside down. At first, I could not believe what he was doing. He launched into party business, and not only party business, but Central Committee business, beginning with the Central Committee's expulsion of Connie Matthews Tabor, Cataway Tabor, and the New York 21, and Elmer Geronimo Pat, a Black Panther from Los Angeles. All these Black Panthers were guilty of serious offenses, actions that had jeopardized other comrades at the party. The New York 21 had written an open letter to the Weathermen saying that they felt the leadership of the party had lost its revolutionary fervor and that the Weathermen were the true vanguard of the revolution. Real quick so y'all know what's going on. So the rapists, right, that they trusted, I guess, to be truthful and honorable, made a power play here. And basically this is where the break-in, like the group starts. So he not only does he say, like, he starts saying like, oh, well, actually the political prisoners that Huey's trying to represent, they actually don't fuck with him no more because they don't think he's as revolutionary as he needs to be. And not only do they not believe in the Black Panthers anymore because of this, they're looking at crackers as the example of true revolutionary people. It's well,
This is
can't
what happens when you're in community with violent misogynists. They will eventually turn on you. When you find out someone is a violent misogynist, cast them out.
exactly.
Cast them out, please. Or unalive them, whichever y'all have access to.
I'm telling you. And then also too, don't rewrite history or sanitize it. We don't want to hear about all his talents. I don't give a fuck if that nigga can moonwalk. If he's a predator, he's a predator, and that's it. And that's how you
And he's
describe him from
moving
now on
like a
out.
cop. He's literally
Okay.
moving like the police. He's disrupting the organization.
Over and over again. So you would have to wrestle with, damn, okay, this nigga ain't even meeting expectations. Why are they bending the rules for him, making it safe for him, and at the same time endangering all the people putting in work, which again, if y'all remember from reading, most of the Black Panther Party that did the survival programs were Black women. So they were willing to put all the Black women at risk who were actually doing the work, building the survival programs needed for ongoing revolution for a rapist who wasn't even putting in work.
A self-admitted rapist too. Like it takes a special type of child.
Sat and wrote a book about it, did spell check and all that. Well, back then it was a spell check, but you know what I'm saying. It's like, yo, niggas, he had no shame. But then again, we heard how Huey described rape as some kind of love affair, homosexual orgy. So
Let's
that's
wake it
when
up. Let's
that's
wake up.
so exactly. So then you have to see, you'd be like, huh, well, is it because the rapist did a lot of work? Is that why Huey valued him? No, that's not it, because Huey said himself the nigga ain't did shit. Is it because they align? Oh, well, it looks like it. So whatever. And we got to have these critiques, man, because it'd be obvious failures that happen. Like we've seen too many examples of groups that form and don't practice constant self-critique and also not centering, I'm sorry. And not centering restorative justice in a proper way. Like we see too many times people rally around the demagogue in the group, the most charismatic one, the one that's a leader, the one who might, grab more attention and get more people to join. All of a sudden, all of the rules of morality and accountability go out the window to center them. And we see that never works. And what ends up happening is those organizations end up turning to cults, like a Black Hammer, or what I'm saying, or into being counter-revolutionary, siding with the state and acting as cops and disrupting other revolutionary movements. So yeah. All right, so let me finish reading him fucking shit up. The New
That
York
was
20.
a necessary intermission.
Thanks, babe. Let's see. All these Black Panthers were guilty of serious offenses, actions that had jeopardized other comrades and the party. The New York 21 had written an open letter to the Weathermen saying that they felt the leadership of the party had lost its revolutionary
You read
fervor.
that already.
Oh, my bad. Let me see. Oh, then I must be on now. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Thank you. Now in this public setting before thousands of viewers, the rapist chose to disagree with the actions of the Central Committee. However, he did not attack me. He attacked David Hillard, the chief of staff. The rapist accused David of having allowed the party to fall apart and said that we had expelled many loyal comrades without sufficient cause. I disagreed with him and defended David. David had done a good job of sustaining the party while I was in jail, often working with scant support, yet keeping things together from coast to coast. In my opinion, if anyone was at fault, it was me. Whatever wrongs there were in the party, I said, I took full responsibility. Very angry about the rapist stunt, I nevertheless kept calm, and after the rapist and I finished talking, I answered questions from listeners, but my mind was no longer on the show. I was trying to figure out why the rapist had pulled this act in public, particularly when just 3 hours he had agreed to participate. What was going on? Even as I began to understand, as details fell into place in my mind, I still believed there was a contradiction that could be handled within the party structure. It had not occurred to me that the rapist might want to undermine the party. On leaving the TV studio, I went straight to a payphone and placed a call to the rapist. I had been cool in public, but I was seething inside, and I wanted him to know my real feelings. When we were connected, I let him have it. He had shown no concern for the political prisoners, and on this occasion, when we had an unusual opportunity to make a major move to organize behind them, he had gone on an individualistic, boom, whew, that word gets me every fucking time, be kicking my whole ass. Oh shit. Individualistic trip. Talking madness. Bobby's New Haven trial was just beginning. We had no idea what the outcome would be, yet Eldridge had shown complete disregard for them and all the others facing trial. When I finished, I flew to Boston, and there I called the rapist again. What I did not know when I made these two calls was that I was not talking to a man, but a tape recorder. The rapist taped my calls and then released them to NBC in New York, which played my private privilege remittance over the American network. The Minister of Information had set me up. He was committing reactionary suicide and trying to take me down with him. It soon became clear that the rapist had organized a plot to subvert the work of the party and sacrifice Bobby and Erica to the establishment. He had done this by questioning party ideology and by attempting to turn a number of Panthers against the party and the Central Committee. Immediately after these public charges against Hillard, the key members in 4 Black Panther branches in New York and 1 in New Jersey publicly announced that they supported the rapist and thereby resigned from the party. Obviously, this campaign had been planned well in advance. The perpetrators were only waiting for a perpetuous time to carry it out. The final evidence of the plot came when Connie Matthews Tabor and Michael Cataweo Tabor turned up in Algiers. Everything pointed to the fact that the rapist had sent Connie here in October of 1970 with subversion in mind, and it finally came to pass in February 1971. The rapist's defection was now out in the open. The next few weeks were tense, but we went ahead with our preparations for the Intercommunal Day of Solidarity on March 5th. I was now to be the keynote speaker. I knew that everybody at the rally would expect me to say something about the rapist in answer to all the charges he was making against us through transatlantic interviews. Where's my water? But when the night of the rally arrived, I decided against mentioning him and gave a brief address with no direct reference. The rally was a great success. It raised people's awareness of the survival programs and brought increased support for political prisoners. More and more people from the Black community were joining us in our determination that political oppression, imprisonment, and even death would not deter us from our efforts to free our imprisoned brothers and sisters. The spring and summer following the rally brought increased momentum into my life. The survival programs, the ideological institute, the reorganization of the party required my full attention, and events, both tragic and joyful, rushed in on one another during the months. At the end of May, Bobby and Erica, who had been defended by Charles Gary, were acquitted of the false charges brought against them by the state of Connecticut. After a brief delay, Bobby was released, and he and Erica returned to Oakland to resume their work in the community. Seeing Bobby again was a moving experience. We had not been together on the streets of Oakland since August 1967, in the early uncertain days of the Black Panther Party. Now, almost 4 years later, we were once again on the block with our comrades. We had gone through a great deal of danger and pain during those years, but But we had survived, stronger and more committed than ever. Everything we had suffered had been worth the price. And during that time, the party had grown from a local group to a network of branches and chapters in North America and abroad. Many of our noble warriors had been cut down, and other early members had shown themselves unable to withstand the pressures of a protracted revolutionary struggle. But we were happy to be together again, united in our goals for our people. The establishment, however, was determined to keep us on the defensive. The district attorney of Alameda County began his moves to have me tried a second time. Even more serious were his efforts to railroad Chief of Staff David Hillard into prison on the trumped-up charges that had come from the shootout on April 6, 1968, when Bobby Hutton had been murdered. The charge, assault with a deadly weapon against a police officer known to be in pursuit of his duty. David had been arrested that night, although there was no evidence that he had a weapon or even that he was on the scene of the shootout. Yet the district attorney who conducted his prosecution got the kind of jury he wanted, as they usually do, and was able to lead them into convicting David on these charges, even though the district attorney himself could not prove that David had a weapon. Once again, the Black Panther Party got the kind of justice, in quote, we had come to expect. In July, David was sentenced to serve 1 to 10 years in the state prison and was quickly whisked off to Vacaville, as I had been 3 years earlier. During the 5 years since the party had been formed, it always seemed that time was measured not in days or months or hours, but by the movements of comrades and brothers in and out of prison and by the dates of hearings, releases, and trials. Our lives were regulated not by ordinary tempo of daily events, but by the forced clockwork of the judicial process. No sooner had David begun serving his term than we turned our attention to the upcoming trial of George Jackson, who had been falsely charged with killing a prison guard at San Quentin. His trial was scheduled for August 23rd, 2 days before it was to begin on August 21st, while attempting to save his brothers in San Quentin's cell block from being massacred by guards. He was shot and killed by his enemies. He had fulfilled his own prophecy. I know that they will not be satisfied until they push me out of this existence altogether. Let's see how long it's been. I guess we got more time. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can knock out more. I'm trying to get as much read as possible so I can get to the next book by Joy James. Or you know what? I'm going to stop here because it is a good place to stop. I forgot I have to go to a Palestinian rally here in Houston, a Palestinian solidarity rally in Houston. So yeah, I got to get going. So thank y'all for coming. I'll schedule the next space. So this isn't the end. We do have more to read. We have about, let's see, this is chapter 30. We got about maybe a little over 30 pages, a little less to read. So I think the next space, probably I can knock out those 30 pages and have a discussion as well. But unfortunately today I can't hold one. Maybe someone else can hold the space and y'all can build on what we went over today. But yeah, take care of each other and look out for each other and choose. I can't wait till you get better, and I hope more people send you positive energy.
Thank
And
you for reading to us.
of course,
We really appreciate you. We know you have a lot to do, but it means a lot that you read to us every day.
I appreciate you. So yeah, let's get free.